Hey, it's a big old pile of money, and welcome to the channel. This is going to be talking about 401k, and we're going to get into kind of a lot of things about it. So let's start. So you'll see, just type in 401k into Google and see what comes up. Firstly, you'll see the IRS's website. They have plenty of information on there, but sometimes it's not the easiest to parse through. So we'll just go to a website with some decent information. 401k and Investopedia, and learn kind of what it is and how it works. So it says right at the beginning, retirement savings plan that provides tax advantages to savers. We'll get into what that means here in a minute. Also, you'll see the employer may match employee contributions. Does not always happen, but there are some specific instances where they would. There's two major types, traditional and Roth. Traditional is just your standard 401k. It means you put money in, that money gets not taxed when it gets put in, so pre-tax money, and then when you take it out, everything is taxed, including the gains. Roth, anytime you see a Roth, including like Roth 401k, when you take that money out, even though you pay taxes initially on it, you don't have to pay taxes once you take it out. So let's do a calculator. Just type in 401k calculator, go to Bankrate. They have pretty good calculators for things. And we'll see, just play around with some numbers. Let's say for the annual salary, we put in like $38,000. And then how much would you contribute each month? Basically, you can keep it at 10%. We'll switch it to 8%. That'll be fine. Don't worry about raising the salary each year or anything like that. The age, we can keep at 30. Plan to retire at 65. 7% return seems pretty reasonable. And then the match and the salary limit. So what are these? You'll hear people say, oh, they match 50% up to a certain percentage. That means for every dollar that you put in, your employer will match it up to for 50%, up to 6% of your salary. So if you put in 10% of 38 grand is 3,800. They will match only 6% of that. And for every dollar you put in up to the 6%, they will give you effectively half of that money extra. So you can see with the employer match, without the employer match for what we had entered in, it's a substantial difference. So that's one way in which it will rise, both the employer match, if you happen to get that through your job, and then also initial tax savings. So what does initial tax savings kind of even mean? Well, in the US, we have a progressive tax system. So let's pull up a bracket. This one's just from 2023. And you can see, probably easiest to just look at the single filers, but you can see married filing jointly. You could see married filing separately. There's tons of different ways to do it. And you'll see a bunch of different ones. And it's pretty much the same information being shown again and again. There's 10%, 12%, 22%. But if you make a certain amount, all your money is not taxed at that amount. It fills up from the bottom. This is actually probably a good graphic to see that. So for first $11,000, basically, you get taxed at 10%. If you make $1 over that, that dollar is taxed at 12%, but the first $11,000 is still taxed at 10. If you make over $44,725 for that year, then that will be a little bit at the higher tax bracket. So I'll show you kind of how this works just with like an income tax calculator. So this one's from NerdWallet. Again, there's plenty of other ones that you can use. But going in here, just click off of that real quick. You can type in our information. Just assume single filer, income level, put in 38 grand. What age are we? Just say 30. But again, you can play around with any of these numbers. You can see how it changes by doing this. So if you put in nothing, you're earning $2,600 and change. By putting $3,800, you can see you already effectively lower your tax rate and drop another $400 in taxes that you owe. And you can put other IRA contributions or withholdings. You'll probably have some withholdings regardless. Most companies will put that in, and you can adjust it too. But if you add more to the 401k, let's say $5,000, as you just saw, it lowered again. Let's say you make more money. Let's say you make 50 grand. Your taxes are higher because you filled up more of the higher tax bracket. Let's say you put 10,000 in. Then you substantially lower the amount of money that you owe in taxes that year, literally just by keeping it in this account, as opposed to keeping it in some other account that's not pre-tax. And you can play around again with the numbers. Let's say you put in 23,000. That's the max for this year. This one's calculator is a little outdated. We'll put in 22,500, and you can see pretty huge savings from if you didn't save any money at all into the 401k, and that's not even counting the match that you get from your employer. And then in addition, we talk about capital gains tax rate. On a side note, it is good to know that basically you can take money out of the 401k. There's other ways to do this. Don't want to get into that too much because you want to stay in it as long as possible to have for your retirement, but just be aware of that. But what are capital gains? So there's short-term and long-term capital gains. It says it right there. Your short-term, usually the designation is about a year. And so if you have a short-term capital gain, you buy something, you hold on to it for less than a year, you're going to be taxed similar to the tax bracket that you saw for your income. But if you hold an asset for more than a year, your long-term capital gains will fill up in a different tax bracket, which is more advantageous. So if you see, we'll just keep the same one single filer for the first $47,025. You're not taxed at all for taking that out. And why is this important? Well, basically, you're trying to take this out essentially when you're no longer working. But we'll put in an example where you actually do have taxable income for this calculator. But if you take it out when you're not working, then that fills up $0 in taxes, which is pretty amazing. Let's say you keep it 1 year or less. We'll put in some other numbers for this calculator. You see, okay, your long-term capital gains tax on the short-term gains are right under $21,000. And you can see if you ended up having income, how much you'd probably be paying on that. Let's say for more than a year. That switches to the long-term capital gains tax bracket. You can see how much money you fill up at each of the 0, then 15, then 20% brackets. And that's huge. You save a ton in taxes just by taking that money out as a long-term capital gain, which is what you should do again. Probably after 59.5. You see right there, if you withdraw it before that time, then you pay a 10% tax penalty. Now, again, if you have to do it, you have to do it, but this is part of a strategy that a lot of people will say is the 3-bucket strategy. What does that mean? It means keeping some money in a brokerage account, a pre-tax account, some money in a Roth account, so tax-free or after-tax account, and some in a brokerage. So you're able to get to money. There's a video put on by the MoneyGuys, which I'll link in the description, that does a really good job in explaining this. But let's go and take a look at our investments real quick, as this channel hopefully shows you over time that this actually works. So what we'll do again, as previous, buy a partial share of VTI, and you'll see how much the money's been doing by just doing $25 a week. Now, there's a lot more in 401ks. You can get really into the weeds with these things. but hopefully this video provided some information on it, understand why some of these things are important. Hopefully you don't go to TikTok and see all of the negativity with this or people pushing you products. 401ks are great, Roth IRAs are great. There's plenty of other things, so watch out for future videos. Thanks, and I hope you're doing well.